the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
Near is better than far. And small is better than big, and simple than complex. And down in the footnotes, where even there, the good people find us in 5-point type, Helvetica. We say no. We say personal is better than corporate, and physical is better than abstract. Well, this is David Tulis, the blogger with the biggest pen in Chattanooga, and that is a 180-foot tower with powerful emanations through the air and through the ground, with our wonderful, wonderful message, AM 1240, and also FM 92.7 and 95.3 HD4. This is David Tulis. We cover local economy and the free markets. And Tracy Arnold faces a trial tomorrow. She is a young mother, 25 years old, and has 6 children adopted. There are 6 children and stepchildren with her husband, Bill, and she is in Sessions Court in Hardin County tomorrow. And what is interesting about her is that she's, I think, the first person to care about the issue of the right of travel who is of the female sex, not gender. Her sex is female. She is a woman, and she has been before court several times with the question of, Am I free to use the public right-of-way on my own without asking for government permission? Where does the government get the authority to arrest me and charge me and threaten to have my children taken up by Child Protective Services if I ask questions, which is what she does. She asks questions of officers and makes a very colorful and interesting time for members of the constabulary in that county and elsewhere, as she says, no, you don't have authority to do that. State your authority. Why am I here? I am not in commerce. And the argument she's making is really remarkable and rarely made. It's rarely made because members of the bar don't want to stir any trouble. They have, in fact, a stake in the status quo. Now, we here at New Radio have a stake in reform, many reforms that we're looking for, and to which we count on God's patience and God's grace, because some of them will take, 100 years. We won't see any glimmer of improvement in that time, I dare say. This is David Tulis. And Tracy Arnold says the following. Here's what she says. It's very much like my argument for the fact that Airbnb and similar platforms should be allowed untrammeled use of properties in Chattanooga without regulation. It's the same argument that she makes, except she's applying it to limits on state authority on the use of the means to get here, right? That would be the car or the truck. And here's how commercial government works. It's kind of a complicated picture, but I think if you think of it as she explained it to me last night in a long phone call. This is how the world really works, and I offer it because I offer it with a bit of laughter and a glimmer, because that is her personal manner. She's very cheerful and laughs with a kind of cackling laugh, very charming manner of speech. And her analysis is as follows: that the state of Tennessee has the authority to regulate the commercial use of the public roads. It has that authority because the public roads are owned by the people. They're called the public free right-of-way, or the right-of-way open to public vehicular traffic, things like that. These indicate that you have an absolute right to be there, an absolute right to be there, okay? But if you are making money off of the roads, if you're a hauler, a cabbie, a bus company, you run dump trucks, you run trailer tractors, you operate a courier service, well, guess what? You're using the public's asset, the roads, for your own profit. And how is the public to be compensated for this use? Think of the pounding of big trucks. Think of a flatbed hauling a piece of earth-moving equipment what kind of weight is on each little crack in the tarmac when that truck passes over? Well, that crack gets bigger and bigger, and eventually little bits of grass start growing in it, and the chink gets larger and larger, and finally you have a pothole. Who's going to pay for that? Well, should you pay for that? Well, no. You, my listener, you're traveling privately in your car. You're just going to a business meeting. You're maybe taking your children to violin practice, one, and a Spanish class the other, and you're on the road in your minivan. You're not using the road for hire. But the people who are making a living because of the road, they are required to be subject to regulation. Why? So that their brakes can be checked, their manifests inspected, that they are in commerce, that they have, that their drivers are awake. Right? Think of the Brewer killing on the highway, where the truck driver in commerce killed 6 people in a family. Think of Jonathan E. Walker, the operator of a Durham School Services bus. He killed 6 children in an accident, seemingly of negligence, right? Violating the rules of the road. So these are people involved themselves in commerce. They're making money. They're making a profit on the people's asset, which would be state roads, county roads, and city roads. And these people who are the taxpayers need to be compensated for that use. So the state has authority to regulate commerce. What is commerce? Commerce is, just look at any legal dictionary, it is transportation. It is the carrying of goods and people for hire. Okay, that's what commerce is, particularly as it touches on the use of the roadways. Well, here's Tracy Arnold, 25-year-old woman who's already had several encounters with police and judges as she's developed her understanding of this issue. And she's going to be in Hardin County Sessions Court tomorrow, trying to get charges against her dismissed. And an encounter that lasted for an hour in a parking lot of a store in Middle Tennessee. Hardin County's in the middle of Tennessee, west of Lawrence County. So that's kind of halfway between here and Nashville, or between here and Memphis. Let's just put it that way. Okay, along the border with the states to the south, Mississippi and Alabama. And so she's saying that she's free to use the public right of way because she's operating privately. And so she's going to ask these various questions of the officer, and she's going to make the argument. The argument is that she is innocently, privately, and not for profit using the public road. The use of the road is incidental to her calling as a mother. Okay, she's not making a living on the road, and so her argument is, why do you want me to be in commerce? I'm not in commerce. I'm privately using the road, and she has an absolute right to be there. And that is the argument that she and others are making. And it is a minority report, and lawyers don't understand it. And that this is another question that we can leave for another time. But think for a second. How is it that you can be licensed to drive your car, to use your car privately? What is a license? Well, there are certain occupations that are licensed. Think about lawyers. What about engineers, surveyors, surgeons, hairdressers are licensed. And those are occupations. Now, a license is, the legal definition of a license is an occupation that affects the public health, safety, and welfare, and therefore subject to regulation under the police power of the state. But driving a car, even if you're using the words that are commercial in terms, even the commercial word is used to describe the private act of driving a car, is not an occupation. Driving a car, using an automobile, or using a truck on the public right-of-way is simply a harmless activity. It is private activity. It is called communication. Traveling is called communication. And it does not affect the public interest. And yet the state has created what could be called a state license. It's a state privilege, unlike any other privilege. Privileges usually are occupations or callings controlled by the state. Here we have an activity which is a common activity, common to all, and it is premised. The state's control of private users is premised on the 1937 Commercial Driver's License and Operators Act. That's not the exact name of it, but that's what it's about. And that act creates two categories of users of the road. Again, in commerce, chauffeurs and operators. Operators are people who have physical control of the vehicle, and the chauffeur is the person who's licensed by the state to safely operate the motor vehicle or means of transport. Now, the operator in that definition is, I think, the person who's in the vehicle that's being towed. Okay, so that person does not have to have a chauffeur's license, merely an operator's license, because he's involved in the commerce of carrying injured vehicles along the highway. So that person is the operator, and the other one's the chauffeur. So the chauffeur is the truck driver, the bus driver, the tow truck driver, the dump truck driver, the courier service van driver, the cabbie. These are all people subject to that law. But private parties like mothers, well, are they? This is the question. And that is something coming up in which I have a great interest, because it is, as one legal historian has said, writing at Nooganomics.com, it is the forgotten right. And you have a right to go from point A to point B. It's called a property right. You have a property right in movement. And what has to happen, I suggest, is that there needs to be the right case asking the right questions, and making it impossible for the judges to dodge and solve the case on a minor point or a technicality. That's what can happen. What probably will happen in the Jay Hirsch appeal. I made efforts Friday to contact the Department of Safety and Homeland Security and talked with a young staff attorney named Kyle Turner, asking him for a copy of the state's pleading in the matter. There's been a 58-page brief filed in defense of the right of property in movement by Arthur J. Hirsch, who is a handyman and commoner in Middle Tennessee and Lawrence County, whose trial I covered. You can read about that trial at Nooganomics.com. The website for the Man Who Matters, I mentioned that website because it really does have, it really goes into the deep questions about how things really are. And if you subscribe and follow my analysis, you will be, I trust, edified and informed. This is David Tulis. We are here, brought to you by Clay Whitaker, the best attorney in Chattanooga. I would propose Clay Whitaker at the McCoon Law Firm downtown. That's the McCoon Law Firm. There's a story of some interest that's gotten now 40,000 views on Facebook, and that's the story of Josh Standifer dealing with a hospital in Cleveland, Tenova, that discharged a man in a wheelchair who was wearing gray scrubs and who apparently is a homeless man well known to officers, and who was incapacitated somehow, either by medication or some other unknown problem. And as I say, the story's been, there are several videos at Josh Standifer's Facebook page, and one has been seen about 40,000 times. This story broke, I think, Friday. Judy Walton of the Chattanooga Times-Free Press. She's she's a major writer in Chattanooga. She is a powerhouse in the field of journalism. She and Dave Flessner, I would propose, are the most important writers we have. They are writers of great esteem, tremendous experience, tremendous care and detail. Dave Flessner knows how everything works. Any story he writes is going to be professionally done. It will be accurate. It will be fair. And those two are top staff people at the Times Free Press. So the Free Press story says, Samaritan says helping homeless man got him threatened, banned by Bradley County Hospital. He's Josh is a Lee University graduate, and he's chairman of the Bradley County Young Republicans. Now, there's something he says in this in Judy's story that I didn't catch in the single of the 3 or 4 videos that I watched this morning, and it's this. It was his suggestion that the man who in the videos does not look up. We don't see. I gather we don't see his face. And in Josh's videos on Facebook, we don't learn his. These are Facebook accounts, by the way, not YouTube. We don't learn his name as far as I can tell. But Judy Walton gives this gentleman's name, who's well known to police and has been has been in need of care and help. And the accusation by Josh Stanford, the young Republican, is that here's a man who's been maybe wrongly discharged. And the moment of action came when Josh saw this man sort of near the incoherent man out in traffic on Chambliss Avenue, and as Judy says in her story, and Josh is trying to get him back to some kind of safety. But one suggestion that caught my notice is a quote from Josh. Well, he's obviously intoxicated from medication. How about placing him under arrest for public intoxication? And that's what the story says that he asked the officer. At least if he's arrested, he'll be safe, he said that he had argued. But he said the officer, whose name he didn't get, said the homeless man is well known to local law enforcement and that he didn't want to place him under arrest. So the idea that a man should be arrested for his safety is a little strange. It's a little bit Republican in that it reflects the larger Republican interest in security and safety, right? The Republican Party is the warfare and military-industrial complex party. It does not really care about free enterprise. It does not really care about the restraint by the Constitution upon the acts of power by the state. And here we have, I'd say, a kind of an offhand example of that kind of thinking. Well, arrest the man, and therefore he'll be safe. Well, in the larger sense, well, why don't we have total surveillance? Let's have total massive surveillance, not just the metadata, but every phone call we make needs to be recorded. Every text message we send needs to be recorded, not just the metadata, which describes the to and the from, who got it and who sent it, and the time. That's the metadata. But the actual content, we need to have total security because we want to have safety. And the Republican argument for the total state, I think, is lacking. Now, what do you think? Do you think that's lacking? 800-8949, 800-8949, if you want to chime in. This is David Tulis, and the story does show the good side of Josh Stanford. He's stopped what he's doing. He's concerned about this man, and he has what is in the one video that I looked at, a confrontation with the security officers of Tenn Hospital, which apparently has banned him. It's not quite clear if that's something that can be administratively enforced, or how that's is he going to receive written notice about this, or how exactly that's going to be a company against an individual who had been there for a checkup and saw this man. There is something good about Josh's care for this person, trying to find out why he's slumped over in his chair, why he's acting erratically, why he's got slurred speech, why he so desperately had to use the men's room that he couldn't get there, so his pants are wet. This is I think a kind of gracious intervention, and then to post it on Facebook also is worth noting. That's something I think you should think about when you have any encounter with pretended authority. Now, here we have a private business or a corporate business, Tenn Hospital, and it's men in blue there, right? The mall cops saying, "Well, sir, we can't have you videoing this. We're under HIPAA rules." Well, a private party cannot violate the HIPAA law. That law applies to health people, to doctors, and medical administration. You, my listener, I don't believe can violate HIPAA. It doesn't apply to you. And so if you find out about someone's medical condition apart from an actual permission under HIPAA, you're not the violator. Okay, the violator is the clerk or the official who let slip some bit of private data that you have come across. So that there's that sort of implied threat by the hospital staff in its statement. The statement that came from the hospital was very vague and non-informative, referring to the care and privacy of our patients that we take very seriously. We have practices and policies in place to support the safe discharge of patients. The information conveyed in the videos, it says, is not accurate. Unlike the ability of private citizens to discuss sensitive matters publicly, hospitals are held to a high standard that requires we protect patients' health information. So that's the sum of what Tenn Hospital says in the report, I think, by our WRCB TV3. This is David Tulis, and we argue for loving our neighbors and buying local. loving our neighbors and buying local. The whole question about the right of free travel is really remarkable. And I mention it because commercial government, that's how commercial government operates. It operates by threat and duress. And we have a quote from the chief of police regarding the shooting of that child. He says, "I can't even begin to imagine the fear and the horror that mom experienced at that moment." That's Fred Fletcher in a video that I think it's worth watching. It's on WRCB TV's website. Well, horror and fear is not something that should happen to anybody, even to a mother of 6. And that's what this young Tracy Arnold faces. She faces fear and horror at being assailed, and the threat made that the state's going to take away her children because she's traveling freely on the public right of way. That is something that's something remarkable about the operation of the modern state. David Tulis, Nooga Radio.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240.